Hey guys, Fletcher Шрek here, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro. Want to talk to you guys today about our eyeballs under the water, our electronics on our boats. Pretty obvious, I love Lowrance electronics. I've got 3 HDS-12 Gen 3 units, Gen 3 touch units on my Legend V20 boat. Not exactly essential to have 3 units. I mean, I could get by with 2. But really, these things are my eyeballs under the water on the Elite Series. Even if we're fishing shallow water tournaments, there's a lot of things that these units can do just using the mapping features, sonar, the structure scan, down scan, imaging. There's a lot that I can do with these units to help me everywhere I go and become efficient on the water. And what I want to talk to you guys today basically is about the setups that I use on each of my units, some of my transducer, ping speeds, pallets, things like that. So we're going to get into that stuff. And I want to help the beginner that may have one of these units, one of these HDS units on their boat. I want to help them out and get their settings correct so you have confidence whenever you're using your unit. You have confidence that your settings are set correctly, and all you have to do is figure out what you're looking at. Over the past several years, I've been using several different electronics, and I'm here to tell you today that the new Gen 3s by Lowrance, the touch screens, these things are just amazing. They're so user-friendly, even for a beginner to work through the screens. They're super simple to figure out. My favorite thing about these units is how fast they are. It's amazing how fast I can click around these screens and how quick the processors are on these units. I can go from screen to screen. When I'm out on the water, sometimes you get in a hurry, and these units are able to keep up, and that's a big deal to me when I'm out on the water on tournament day. First thing I want to talk to you guys about is how to set my shortcuts and also my data overlay as well. One of the first things I like to do whenever I turn my unit on is I like to set these shortcut keys. Basically, Lowrance has allowed us to create our own pages, combining chart and sonar, or 2 structure scan. I'm able to have a side structure scan and a down structure scan image all on the same screen. And it's pretty simple. You just click on the plus sign down here on the pages, and I'm able to actually drag whatever you desire. We're going to create a chart with a sonar, and I can either have them both vertical, or I can have them set on horizontal screens. So what I actually do before a tournament, I like to go to my home screen and set up the pages that I want to use. Typically, my unit here, I'm typically going to run my chart with my sonar is what this unit's designed for, and I like to run my side imaging and down imaging on my unit on the right. But these shortcut keys allow me to go through my unit really quickly, and if I want to switch over to a 4-panel display, I can actually go to chart, have my sonar running, my side imaging, and my down imaging all in one screen, and I can quickly go back to the main menu and go back to just chart and sonar whenever I want to make a run down the lake. So once we've already saved our shortcut screens, the next thing I'm going to go is I'm going to go into that shortcut and I'm going to create my overlay. And what I mean by overlay is my speed on my graph, my time, my water temperature, possibly my battery voltage, just in case your battery runs low at the end of the day. I want to keep a monitor on what my battery levels are, and also my depth. And what I'm able to do is I go into each separate page and I adjust my overlay different for every page that I have. So we're going to move into 4-panel here, and as you can see, I have my speed up in the upper left, my time below it, and my structure depth here. So if I wanted to add anything, let's say I wanted to add battery voltage, I'm going to press the power button, press edit overlay, and I'm going to click add up here in the upper right. And let's say I wanted to add in, once again, I wanted to add another time. I simply select the time, or I can add the date by simply selecting date, exit out of the screen. Now my date is right here. I can press the zoom in button or the plus button to make the date larger, or I can press the minus button to make that overlay smaller. I can drag that around and place it where I want to, and once that is in its place and I feel good about where it's at, I simply click save. And now my date has been added to my other overlay, and every time that I go from the home screen to that 4-panel screen, that new overlay that I just added is on that screen. Now I'm going to show you guys what I would consider as my home screen and how I set it up. Typically on my left unit, I like to run my chart much larger than I do my sonar. This is the screen that I'm using whenever I'm making runs across the lake, or just figuring out where to go. I like my chart much larger than that sonar because it allows me to see so much more of the lake and the contours and things like that. So basically I can go in and edit how large I want these screens. So I'm going to press the power button and click adjust splits, and I can actually make that sonar as wide or as narrow as I want it. And all I have to do, if I want it to be a 50-50 split screen, I'll slide that over to the middle, and I press save. Now my sonar is obviously a lot larger, my chart's smaller, but for most of the time I like my chart extremely large. That way I can see a lot of the details and trails and things like that to keep myself safe when I'm running my boat down the lake. Now I want to show you how to be a little bit more sneaky on the water by setting your key beeps. There's nothing worse than being out on the water and creating a waypoint or trying to detail possibly a waypoint and your unit making tons of beeps. You can hear a lot out here on the lake whenever it's quiet out, and a lot of times I feel like other competitors are able to hear what I'm doing out there on the unit. So I like to turn my key beeps off, and I simply go from the home screen to settings, and right here it says key beeps, and I just select off. I feel like that just allows me to be more quiet on the water and not really notify other anglers if I happen to be typing something into my unit. I like to use a couple different mapping options on any lake that I go to. So right now I have the Navionics chip in my unit. And one thing I really like about that is I'm able to change the colors of the contours around the lake depending on what depth I want to really look at. If I'm looking for a more of a deep water bite, say I'm in fishing that 15 to 20 foot range, I can highlight 15 to 20 foot of water. If I'm primarily fishing a shallow tournament, I can highlight 5 foot and less. And how I do that is simply go into chart options, I select view, and I select depth highlighting range. And right now I have my max depth set at 6 feet. So anywhere around the lake that I start to see white, I know that's typically 6 foot or less all the way around the lake, and that helps you build on patterns. If I get to a bank similar to where we're sitting at right here, where there's very little white, I know that's a very steep contour, and it just helps me break down the lake really fast by using this depth highlighting range. I can tell a lot about the lake just by looking at the shading that's on the map. Next, I want to talk to you guys about managing your waypoints and making you more organized with your unit whenever you're on the water. One thing I've learned about traveling across the country all the time, fishing different lakes over the years, is I learned that I needed to start being consistent with my waypoints. So I've basically created a waypoint key in my own mind about what certain things mean. Lowrance offers several options that you can use, from stop signs to just a generic blue circle to trees. I try to stay consistent. Every time, say I mark a rock pile, I always use rocks. Anytime I'm marking a grass line, I'll always use the grass icon. I try to keep those consistent everywhere I go. That way, whenever I show up to a lake that I haven't been to in a few years, I know exactly what that waypoint means. And oftentimes, I'll go in, let's say I would like to use the generic blue dot to mark an area. Lowrance allows me to go in and make a name. Say I can say north wind here, because this area would be good on a north wind. Just a generic, just a generic title to help me remember, to stay in that area on a north wind. And I can label every single waypoint with this touchscreen really quickly, and it helps breaking down that body of water a lot easier whenever you go to look over your waypoints right before a tournament. Something I would recommend if you like to make a lot of waypoints, or you happen to fish a lot of different areas across the country, even in your state, is to actually save the waypoints by each lake that you visit. And after leaving that lake, clear your unit out and delete all those old waypoints that you don't need right away. That way your unit keeps running at top speed at all times. One thing I really learned while fishing on the Elite Series that's helped me a lot from day to day is I like to set my trails different colors for every day. Say Monday's a red, Tuesday's a blue, and so on and so forth. That way I can go back and remember where I was at what day for navigation purposes, as well as where I was at and what areas I was in whenever I was fishing, to help me put pieces of the puzzle together on tournament day. So how do I change my trails on this unit? I'm going to go to the home page, I'm going to select trails. We're going to make a new trail. Let's say today's Monday and I'm going to use a blue trail. I select the blue trail, I select save. Once I get in the boat on Tuesday, I'm going to simply press new trail, select the color of the trail, and we're going to go to a yellow trail, and I select save. And one thing you want to remember, the same as with the waypoints, once I'm done with this lake and I'm ready to move on somewhere else, I'm actually going to go in and select delete all trails and delete them out of my unit. It helps my unit run at top speed all the time, But having all those different trails in there for different days helps me mentally organize where I've been and what I've done in the past week on that body of water to help me be more efficient on tournament day. So next we're going to move over to my sonar screen. I'm going to show you guys what settings I use on that and how I adjust my unit to see everything as perfect as I can. So typically on my sonar range, I like to leave that on auto. The unit will actually automatically adjust to whatever depth I'm at. If I happen to go from 30 feet up to 10, it's going to automatically adjust all the time for me. So I like to leave the range in auto. As far as the sensitivity goes, I like to keep my sensitivity turned down quite a bit from the actual default on the unit. This is actually on a -8. And the reason for that is I don't want a whole lot of clutter on my screen. I like my screen to stay pretty clean. I don't want to pick up a lot of debris and small fish and things like that. I turn that sensitivity down. That way when I do see an arc, I know that it's a fish or something I really need to pay attention to. So I definitely keep my sensitivity down. Now we're going to talk about what palette I use. So we're going to go into view. And they offer several different palettes, 14 different palettes to be exact. And I personally like palette 13 the absolute best. I mean, you can actually pick one that's white, but I've really found that palette 13 has the best color separation. For anywhere I go in the country, I'm able to figure out whether it's fish or structure or whatever it may be very easily on palette 13. I highly recommend that. So now we're going to move into the advanced menu button. So here I'm going to make my noise rejection. I'm going to turn that to off. I'm going to turn my surface clarity to off. I leave my scroll speed at normal, and my ping speed at the console, I run at 14. At the front, I run the ping speed anywhere from 16 to 18. And that's pretty well it on the sonar. Basic setups, but those are the setups that I use when running my sonar with my chart or just my sonar on just with the full page. So as you can see here, I just idled up over top of a roadbed, and there's not a whole lot of clutter on the screen. The screen's very clean, and you can actually see some fish that are up off the roadbed here. You can actually select that and zoom in. Because my sensitivity's turned down, I feel really good that the chances are of that being a fish are really solid. If I have my sensitivity turned up way too high, you get a lot of different images that you're not quite sure what it is. So next I want to talk to you guys about something that I feel like changed fishing, or at least offshore fishing altogether, and that's the structure scan, both the side imaging and the down imaging on these Lowrance units. So the first thing I'm going to do whenever I pull up my side imaging on my unit, which is right here in my shortcut menu, I'm going to select my palette. I've done a lot of idling offshore, spent a lot of time with my units. I personally like palette number 8 better than all of them. Everyone's eyes are a little bit different. Some people might see palette 9 with the blue a little bit better, and you can adjust your side imaging over your down imaging to be different colors if you prefer, but I really like palette 8 on both. It gives me the best picture overall. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the advanced screen, and I'm going to turn my surface clarity to off. I'm going to turn my noise rejection for that box is not checked. I want my noise rejection off and my surface clarity off. Also, I want my frequency to be set at 800 kilohertz. 400 kilohertz is more for deep water ocean fishing or any depths over 100 feet. So keep your frequency on 800 kilohertz. As far as the range setting, I typically will set my range not on auto. I like to set the range myself. And a lot of people ask, you know, what depth or what range you want to set it on. Typically it's 3 foot or 3 times the depth that we're in. If I'm sitting in 10 foot of water, I want to be scanning roughly 30 to 35 feet to each side. If I'm in 25 feet of water, I'm able to set that out to 75 feet. So you want to multiply your depth by 3, and that's what's going to give you your side imaging range. So right now we're in about 15 foot of water. We're going to call that about 50 feet to each side is where I'm going to want to set my range. One thing I highly recommend anytime you're using your side imaging, not necessarily your down imaging, but your side imaging, is you want to get the widest range, field of range possible when you're looking at the screen. We're scanning 50 feet to both sides of the boat, so that's 100 feet. So I want to make sure that when I'm looking at this screen, I'm giving myself the best opportunity to see every little detail to the left and to the right, and that's going to make a big difference whenever you're using your structure scan, is making sure you keep that field of vision on your unit as wide and as big as you really can. And that's really why I have this unit on my right here is totally dedicated to just side scan, because it makes that big of a difference. And I want to see every single detail that's off to the left and off to the right. If that picture is much smaller, maybe just down here in the corner, I'm not going to pick up on little rock piles and logs and things like that that are underneath the water. So pretty much at this point, it's been a boring process getting your units set up. But once they're set up, have confidence in what you're seeing. And the next thing that I'm going to show you is going to help you learn and help you really visualize what your unit is showing you when you can't look out across the water and see what's under there. After I get done showing you a few tips that you can work on and practice with, you're going to have your abilities and your confidence in offshore fishing is going to be a lot greater. So when I was first learning to use side imaging and structure scan in the very beginning, what I started doing was I would pick targets that I could visually see up on the bank that I knew looked the same beneath the water. Take this bridge for example. You see the steps on the side of the bridge, you see the rocks around it. So what we're actually going to do here in a minute is we're going to idle past that bridge, and you're actually going to get a good visual of what it looks like underneath the water. And remember the size of that bridge that it looked like on your graph whenever you idle by, whenever you're fishing offshore, and that'll give you a real good idea of the size of the objects. A lot of times a major large rock pile on the side imaging does not look very big a lot of times. And when we idle by that bridge, you're going to see what I'm talking about. A lot of times the objects are a lot smaller than what we as anglers think they're going to be on this unit. So it's really good to get used to picking out certain objects, say a lay down tree or a log that you know is underneath the water and you know the size of it. So now we're going to take a look. We're actually going to go through this bridge and take a look at what it looks like. As you can see, these steps right here on the side, we've got a very flat wall running down the side. There's actually some pieces underneath the bridge that you'll see here in a second. As indicated here on the side scan and here on the down scan, there's some things up underneath holding this bridge together. But anytime you're using your side imaging, you want to make sure you keep a constant, steady speed. Side imaging doesn't work unless you're moving in a straightforward motion evenly at all times. Right now we're moving about 3 miles an hour and steady in that direction to get a clear picture. So we're coming to the end of the bridge here, and as you can see, the steps on that bridge are very, very small, but you can make them out plain as day. The steps are very, very small, but those are actually very big steps. I mean, there could be a 5 or 6 pounder sitting on every one of them steps. That's how big they are. So the point that I'm trying to make is try to line up things on the bank, get a good visual for what it actually looks like on your graph, and I promise you're going to gain a lot more confidence in what you're seeing on your Lowrance units, and it's going to help you find more spots to catch a lot more fish. So now that we've got all our settings right, we have a rough idea of what we're looking at after we looked at stuff on the bank versus beneath the water. Now I'm actually going to idle over a spot that's off the bank that you can't see from above the water, idle over it, waypoint it, get up on the front, and actually I'm going to show you guys how I would go about fishing that spot, and you're going to get a real good visual of what it looks like on the side imaging unit and how I set up to make a cast to that spot. So now we're going to start to idle across this spot here. So here we're going to start to idle across this spot, going to steady 3 to 6 miles an hour. And as you can see, looking on the down scan, here's the top of the road. Looking to our left here, the road is casting a shadow, moving to our left and coming back to our right. There's the brightest return here. You can actually see some riprap down the back side of the road right there. So what I'm actually going to do is pull up the road, scroll back. I love that feature. You're able to scroll back through your history. I'm able to scroll back. Let's mark the top of that road. And I'm not going to mark it with one waypoint. I'm going to mark it with a few. So we're going to mark it with a high spot there. A high spot there. I mark my high spots with the circle with the crosshairs in it. There's my high spots. Now I've got a line of waypoints, okay, across the top of that road. We're going to put a 5th one there for good measure. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to scroll back to that roadbed, and I want to change waypoints. There's some riprap on the back side of that roadbed, so I'm going to mark that with a rock. Mark there with a rock. and I'm gonna put one more rock. So basically I've got 3 rocks in a line. I've got the high spot of that road bed marked out. Now I'm gonna show you guys on the trolling motor how I set up and make a cast on that road bed. So we just finished up idling over this road bed at the console. Now we're up on the front graph. Got ourselves remotely close to this. Now the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look down at my GPS and I'm gonna put a cursor in the middle of the high spot on that road bed. Now if I look down here in the very corner, it's gonna tell me the distance I am from that road bed. Right now we're 50 feet. I try to keep myself anywhere between 40 to 125 feet off of my target. So right now we're within range. And what I have on this boat is a 0.1 antenna. And what a 0.1 antenna does is it only stays, the cursor in which my boat is marked on this unit is always pointed in that direction. It doesn't go with what direction I'm moving, it goes with what direction the boat is pointing, which is very key when I'm trying to line up on this road bed. I can see very easily that the boat's going this way, the road is coming this way. So if I want to make a direct cast at it, all I have to do is simply point my boat directly at that waypoint on the screen and make that cast, and I'm going to be able to hit that road or the riprap, whichever I decide, pretty much on my very first throw. So that 0.1 antenna helps keep me dialed in on exactly my position and where the front of my boat is pointed so I can hit that rock pile every single time. The only thing that's really different settings wise on my front graph is my ping speed. I like to run my ping speed on my sonar anywhere from 16 to 18. Now we're going to go back to the home screen, and I really only run one shortcut on my front graph. It's got a large chart, a sonar at the top, and the downscan transducer on my trolling motor. That downscan really allows me to see separation on the bottom. In perfect timing, you're actually seeing a fish pass underneath the boat on both the sonar and the downscan imaging. And that just allows me, I can use both of these. They're showing me the same picture, but downscan allows me to see the separation just a little bit better. So we're actually drifting off our spot here. We're at about 62 feet. I need to get the 0.1 antenna in the front of the boat pointed towards some waypoints, and we're gonna make a cast on this thing. So pretty much on my first cast, I was able to hit the rock pile, and that's what's so sweet about this. There's a lot of setup and a lot of things that you need to learn to get used to these units, but once you do, it's so rewarding. You're able to, your offshore game is gonna pick up huge, your catches throughout the year are gonna be awesome, and if